Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining me on this special edition of Take 30 News. Exactly a month ago, on 13th of March, the city of Ankara in Turkey saw a major terrorist bombing in which 37 people lost their lives and over 150 were injured. A car packed with explosives was detonated at a bus stop very close to the building of the Department of Education in the Turkish capital. About 36 hours ago, Turkey was hit with another car bomb in a southeastern town. The country borders with Syria and Iraq, where the terrorist group ISIS has been very active. Turkey is also home to a lot of the Kurdish fighters that fight for us in Syria. There are two factions. US supports the Kurdish fighters in Syria, and the other factions, which are the Kurdish Workers' Party (PKK) and the Kurdish Freedom Falcons (TAK), are fighting to create their own homeland in Iraq and parts of Turkey. According to the Turkish intelligence agencies, the Turkish terrorist attacks are coming from that faction. We have a special guest joining in from Turkey today to discuss his life in Turkey despite the bombings. Dr. Gawrych is a history professor at Baylor University and is currently researching about Atatürk, the founder of the Turkish Republic. He is in the capital city of Ankara and is one of the many Americans living in Turkey. The first bomb blast that took place on the 13th of last month was along the bus route that Dr. Gawrych takes every day. Thank you, sir, for speaking with Take 30 News. And first of all, we are extremely glad that you are safe.
I am too, and I'm glad to be here with you.
Could you walk us through, sir, where you were on the night of the 13th of March, and when did you figure out that the route you take every day to go to office was under attack?
Well, I was in my apartment, but I did hear the blast, so I was not far away from where the incident occurred. And when the incident occurred, my Turkish friends called me almost immediately asking if I was safe. There have been a couple more bombings here in Turkey, and I passed through those areas where the two bombings in Ankara have taken place. And there is sometimes thoughts running through your mind about you're going through lucrative targets and you might be hit. So you plan to take travel time when you think there'll be less people around and there'll be less of an incentive to do a terrorist attack. But they're so infrequent that days pass by where you don't really think about an event happening that might injure you or kill you.
So is the US Embassy in any way assisting Americans like yourself in recuperating from such attacks or making you aware of the dangers that are present? Because the way you described your situation on the 13th is extremely scary. Is the US Embassy involved in any way?
Yes, they are. They're doing the best they can. And I am hooked up to the embassy, so they frequently send warnings about an incident might occur on such and such a period. So there was a prior warning to the March 13th incident. On March 11th, they sent a warning that an incident might occur. Then on Easter Sunday, they sent a warning to be careful because religious services might be targeted. So I get frequent messages from the embassy warning me about areas not to go to in certain parts of Turkey. And then in Ankara or Istanbul, certain days not to go to certain events that might attract a terrorist. So they're doing the best they can. And they are also arranging a meeting for us Americans here in Ankara who are interested to meet with people from the embassy to talk about security.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you a question that may be in the minds of a lot of Americans. Is there a sense of fear when you are at a bus stop or when you walk down a crowded street? How do you handle that kind of fear?
Well, you tend to approach it, at least I do, rationally. You look at the time of day and where you are. If it's a bus stop farther away from lucrative targets, like the first major bombing incident this year took place close to the Army, the General Staff headquarters, and it's close to the Air Force headquarters, etc. So you know it's potentially a good target. So you're probably more aware at those times that you are in a place that you should be careful to look around you. But then most of Ankara seems rather safe, so you don't think about those potential incidents occurring in those areas.
Sir, you're a professor of history at Baylor University. You've traveled a lot abroad. I want to ask you a general question. Do you think Americans are vulnerable anywhere they go, not just Turkey?
Well, there's more of a targeting of tourists and Americans because of this global wave of terrorism, but the incidents are rare indeed. And I think it isn't that they're targeting one particular individual, but areas frequented by, for example, tourists, foreign tourists, and Americans are among them, but they're not going and looking where are only Americans going. And the first major incident that occurred was targeting Turkish military personnel, so no foreigners were injured by that incident.
Okay, sir, you must have come across a lot of Turkish people. Can you tell us how they are reacting to these attacks? Because ground situation is best known to people like you and the Turkish people. How are they reacting?
Well, there is a concern for those people who live in areas where it's potential for a terrorist attack. So, for example, after the first major terrorist attack in February, I calculated that the likelihood of a terrorist attack occurring the next day was very low. So I went to my normal route to go to the archives, and there were very, very few people taking the metro that day. So it has affected travel. It has affected routes Turks take in those areas where there are rich targets for terrorists. Mm-hmm. And there is a good deal of anxiety here because there is an awareness that this thing can escalate, and the Turks have not had really suicide bombings until recently, so it's a new phenomenon for them.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Gawrych, thank you very much for speaking to Take 30 News. We hope and pray that you remain safe, and best of luck for your research in Turkey. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. My pleasure.